Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Reverend G, and I'm here every Monday night at 8 p.m. on WEMS Radio Live, bringing you conversations with guests from all walks of life and with varying and different perspectives. We come together, we talk about life, we talk about love, and we talk about spirituality. We talk about spirituality in a practical way. How does it support you in your everyday life? And there's just so much going on now. And so everywhere you turn, there's something to cause you to maybe feel uncomfortable, uncertain, some kind of pain, or something that's going on right now that's causing everybody to be in some really difficult and uncomfortable spaces right now. So I come every week hoping to share with you tools and things that can support you to get through these times. My guests, we talk about what's going on currently, what are we doing in our lives, how do we support ourselves during difficult times. And my goal is to support you in finding joy and living your best life with grace and ease. And we do that by looking at what practices, what things, what are our go to practices. I talk about a spiritual toolkit, and a spiritual toolkit is personal because we all have different things that support us when we need clarity, when we need comforting. We have different tools that we all use. So it's great when my guests come on and they share what they use, and we hope that you can take away something that can support you throughout your days. You can find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on Instagram as Rev Grenetta with inspirational quotes to support you through your day. So tonight I'm excited to have Eric Lugo as my guest. Eric is a creative. He's also a strategic planner and a computer technician. He wears many hats, and I'm excited to have Eric as my guest tonight. Welcome, Eric.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me today.
Yes, I'm excited that you could join me tonight on Conversations with Reverend G. I know we met in Momentum doing transformational training, and so that was a big part of our introduction and where we met. So I know there are so many
Yeah,
different
absolutely. It was. Sorry, I
to
just lost.
what you do. You were getting feedback. Are you okay now?
Yep, sorry, just a little audio issue, but I'm all good now.
Okay, great. Well, introduce yourself and talk about who you are, Eric. I gave you a lot of things, right? It's the whole gamut, right? So introduce yourself and share.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We met through transformational work, gratifying, really wonderful experience, and it's changed the trajectory of my life. Prior to doing it, I was really content, and I was just fine, and I was just kind of doing a day-to-day routine with the same job, common job, hospitality work, and things of that nature, and um, it just didn't work anymore after doing the program, and I had been doing it for quite some time. I'd done it for like 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and then after like at the end of like graduation and stuff, I just kind of started to come to terms with like I'm not actually happy,
Mm,
which was by happy I guess I mean more like I didn't feel any sense of fulfillment in
mm,
the work that I was doing, and I know that in some point, like some degree, it's not that it's not a falsehood to say that it wasn't meaningful, but it was no longer meaningful to me. Like I just kind of I didn't find any satisfaction out of it. I kind of got bored with the day-to-day routine, and I started applying for different roles, and it just didn't work. And then one day I just decided to up and leave. Uh, I I took some crash course classes in tech, which
Mhm.
is something that lots of people within those 17 years have suggested I do.
Mm.
Um, it was clear that I had a skill set that I could speak to. I was constantly called on by friends, family, any kind of acquaintance, and just be like, "Hey, I got this problem that I need fixing with this troubleshooting thing." Even on the work that we had done in the transformational setting, I occasionally became the a tech person, and
Mm.
that's that's to be expected. So I did some course certifications as a means to have an invitation
Mm-hmm.
in actually doing that. So now I do that full time, and it's gratifying, and I'm very happy doing it. It's a full 180.
What role would you say your that transformational training had in your shift? Right now, I can get the part where being on the job for 17 years, it becomes routine, right, and it becomes the same. So you do can feel like, well, I know this. There's no more growth here. Let me move on to something else. What part of your transformational training would you say supported you in just making that leap? Because 17 years is a long time in one
It's
industry.
yeah, yeah, it is. There was I think that there was a conversation. There was like, well, there's a dedicated area that talks about career, and it talks
Mm-hmm.
about increasing, like how you want to explore it. Do you want to switch jobs? Do you want more money?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want do you want more responsibility, or fill in the blanks, anything that you can for career based goals, which lots of companies do. And ironically enough, I did not have something in that section that spoke to actually doing anything in a different capacity than what I was already doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I had learned the during one of the events that I went to is I went to an art event, and I was representing a really great artist, Marcus McGuire. He's phenomenal, and I was representing him one night because he had two events at one place. Um, he couldn't be at two places in one time,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt kind of oblivious to just being exposed to something like that prior, which was really bizarre because I do art as well as tech.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of digital art, and I just felt like being in that space in itself was just like creating this, like, oh my god, I could do this. I could, like, I would look at amazing pieces on the wall and I would just be inspired, and at the same time I thought, like, my my creations could sit next to these, and it just felt more real. It didn't feel possible impossible or out
Mm-hmm.
of reach, and it was just really nice. It was just a really good feeling. It felt like it was not as complicated as I probably had conceived prior. And
Mm-hmm.
then I did that, and then I started doing that, and I sold artwork, and I started, taking that more seriously with clientele and things of that nature.
I have one of your pieces. Is I didn't. I just looked over there and I was like, oh, I have one of Eric's pieces,
One of the prints, yeah,
right? And one of the prints, right?
yeah.
And as I looked at it as you were talking, I was thinking about knowing you as an artist and as a creative, right? It's interesting. You said you had always done art, but I was going to say, was it a hobby? Did you ever do anything with the art? Where was art
So
prior?
art played a when I was really young, when I was a child. I remember like the what do you want to be when you grow up conversations used to be, I want to make cartoons. And like I didn't have any um I didn't have like any like foresight or aspirations to think any further, like storyboarding or animation or rigging or composition or post composition or like all the terminologies you may see at the end of credit scenes in films, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just like to draw, and I
Mm-hmm.
just like to create. And a lot of the time, it was mostly emulating things that I had already seen on television, whether that was like Looney Tunes or anything that was on Saturday morning when Saturday morning actually showed colorful animated things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't really necessarily feel like that was something my parents wanted. I think it was kind of or my grandparents actually. Um, I think that they wanted me to do something medical, which feels super cliche, but
Right.
that's kind of the route they wanted to go. And I think that they probably had some ideal ideas around like just what the world needs another artist, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I don't know, and I've never had that conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then actually during one of those workshops, I'm drawing on a digital tablet on like an iPad or something, and I had to excuse myself for the evening and said I have to go. I have to finish getting some work done,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of cut short, and I didn't even realize the disconnect. But I was like, yeah, I have to finish this book that I'm working on,
Mm-hmm.
because I was doing some illustrations for someone for a book, and they were like surprised. And then I showed them some pictures and some samples, and showed them my card because at this point in my life now I decided I should probably have a card because people are asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when they saw that, there was just kind of like this moment of like, oh, like this interest, and I got a call even later on in the evening, and it wasn't like a call of like, it wasn't like a, I'm really proud of you, son call, but it was like, oh my god, like this is real, like this is a real thing, like I can tangibly see like he's producing work, and it's amazing. And they were having conversations of things that I was already doing. They're like, you should do this, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I thank you. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful blessing. I was really really touched,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't just this you can be anything speech. It was like this true genuine belief that I could see that there was like more to it. They were like impressed, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't going for I wasn't. I was just like being in the moment of like I have to finish what I'm doing. I'm working, like I'm working and loving what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like I can't really do this and continue to entertain for the night. So it was a really wonderful experience, and I do freelance. I outside of tech I do freelance. Even in my current 9 to 5 job,
Mm-hmm.
um, I do a lot of freelance work. I also do a lot of studying. Um, One of the things that I feel is really that I feel really strongly about is, um, you don't have to have someone tell you you're an artist to be an artist, and you don't have to be complete or a master in something to be an artist. Like I feel like I'm a student and an artist at the same time all the time, because I'm always studying new digital technology. So um, right now I'm really like into sculpting and really into digital sculpting.
What's that?
um,
Digital sculpture.
so digital sculpting is like, I'm trying to think of a more so like let's say like, what's a big animated movie that recently came out? um, what's the latest thing? So let's say Pixar had done, Soul, right, with the bluish, like the bluish figurine character. And maybe one of the characters for the movie started out as like, like a computer generated model, but what somebody at some point probably did is took a 2D drawing and turned it into a 3D rendering. And there's probably somebody that also did like a sculpting. So they do like, it's almost like you're doing clay, like it's like a clay ball, and it's like a virtual clay ball, and you're using that to make a model. And you make the model in this kind of like this cross position, typically when you're doing like animation where your arms are out, legs to the side. And then you kind of puppet it. You put like little points on it, and you create a puppet so that that doll can move. So that's kind of how that sort of thing works. And that's kind of where I'm at now. And I really love it. Like, the thing is, one of the interesting things about it too is I feel like, there's a lot of folks that are probably like half my age and know a bajillion things more than me, and I could care less about it because I'm not worried about like it's not a race to me. Like, it's not like a competitive thing. I just love that I'm in the environment with people who are already doing it and learning from people and being able to show people things that I know that maybe they don't. Yeah. So it's really cool. And it's also still tech, since a lot of the art now is done on like either tablets or computers. Um, there's a tech dynamic to it too. When I was actually doing my certification prep, one of the instructors, I like drew the instructor just sitting down in a lunchroom, and they were surprised that I could draw, and they were like, "You should be doing this like for a living," and I was like, "I do." They're like, "What are you
It's
doing
interesting
in the tech?"
because this is all new for me, talking about uh, this type of work, digital sculpting and all of that, right? So there's a whole nother career around all of this, right?
Oh yeah, sure,
The whole
absolutely.
animation, digital sculpting. So some of the training classes that you've been taking, right? That's what you were saying. You get educated how to do more of this type of digital animation work. Because with me, what comes to mind as we're talking, I think about, oh, well, what careers are there in that line? And if, like, as always, as you were an artist, at some point you were able to take your art to a level, right, where now you are using it in the way that you want, and you found this whole digital world. There are probably a lot of people who are artists and don't know how to take their art to that next level. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that world.
So, ironically enough, I stayed with the traditional style, brushes, pens, pencils, all those things for a really long time. And I
Mm-hmm.
had a really close family friend of mine. He constantly like, I need to, like, you need to try this tablet. Like, you need to get this tablet. And a tablet at the time, he was referring to what's known as a Wacom tablet, which looks like a hard piece of plastic and a pen, and then whatever you press on and it's got like a pressure sensitivity. So whatever you press
Mm-hmm.
on that tablet, it'll emulate that on the screen as if you were drawing on paper. Um, and I was kind of resistant. I didn't. There was like, I didn't even have like any good logic. I was just like, I'm really. It was probably the nature of who I am. I was just really happy and content with doing the traditional stuff. And for maybe like 5 years, he had been pressing. And I was like, fine, I'll get a Wacom tablet, and I did. And I'm like, if he ever watches this episode, Sean, thank you. I love you so much, and you already know that. But I'm glad he like consistently pressed, because that also probably changed the course of of my path. And like, I do so many different things related to art or visual effects now because of it.
I know. I also saw that you do branding and marketing. How does all of that tie into your creative expression?
So yeah, I mean, like, even right. Virtual background. Where it is? My hand is disappearing, but up there, right there. That's like that's a little bit of branding right there for my own brand, which is an independent publishing company that I started, a games company, traditional style board and card games. Branding is important, and I just, you know, I I think that when I first started doing art in a greater capacity, it was in high school, and I wanted to do stuff in computers. I wanted to do like they had like special classes like photography, fashion, illustration, and so on. And computers was insanely in high demand because the resources were not there, but the demand was. So in order to get into that class, it was kind of like a lottery at the time. So I didn't even put down a second thing. I was just like, I want to do the computer graphics, and I didn't. I didn't get in. I got into advertising,
Wow.
which I was like, all right. I mean, it's great, but I didn't. You know, it's not what I wanted. But I'm really grateful for it because I learned a lot from that class. I learned like to really understand like how demographics work. I learned that um, there's a psychographics aspect of things. I learned that in that class we actually had the opportunity to do what all the other classes were already doing. So even though we didn't have a photography, fashion, whatever, we got a little taste of everything, and we applied it to marketing strategy. And one of the beautiful things was I went to the High School of Art and Design. One of the beautiful things about it is that they actually treated the graphic design class as a uh, as an actual firm, and it was a place where clients could actually go and they can get a collective of students who are looking to build a portfolio. So it was a win-win scenario. They didn't have to pay the ridiculous rates. They obviously would have some sort of contract worked out, and the students got to build their own reputation as a graphic designer.
That's great. You games. So you said tabletop and traditional board games, right? Talk
Yeah,
about that whole journey. And it's interesting to me how everybody is now on the computer with all the games, and now you have games we play on the board, right? Talk about
yeah,
how you came to all that and your whole game.
sure. Um, so obviously, like people are really into like Uno and Monopoly and Scrabble and all those, and I like them too. And in I think it was 2014, my wife and I we went to a convention. Typically, we go to conventions like Comic Con and pop culture and things of that. We went to this convention. It's called PAX, which is short for Penny Arcade Expo, which is a web comic that focuses on games. And when we went to that convention, we, the focus for me was like, video games and computer games and things like that. And when we got there, we came to realize that half of the show floor was actually dedicated to board games, card games, tabletop games. And it was a real surprise to us because we had not been exposed to that level of games prior. Like, again, we probably did what a lot of mainstream folks do, which is play like Scrabble, Monopoly, and so on. And going to this convention, it just kind of opened up this whole new world to us where we were like, oh my God, this is amazing. There's people demonstrating these games and so on. We fell in love. It was the first time I actually played Dungeons and Dragons, and it was just an amazing experience. It was really fun. And we, when we got back to New York, we thought, how can we do this at home? Because we really want to we really like it was a great experience over a course of a weekend, but like where is this happening in our home? um and we found like local meetups and communities and things and places that do it. and we just started attending regularly, and we became more and more exposed to games. And I think, similar to what you actually said, the appeal was not sitting in front of a screen, but sitting at a table.
Mm-hmm.
It was being across from someone, and like if it's a competitive or cooperative, wherever the case is, like actually like being in the same space with that person and whatever's coming up, it's fun. It's like that person's, it's unavoidable. Whatever is happening, it's if it's frustration or laughter or anything, it's all right there, and it's all in good fun. Um, Typically, even when I used to play online games, I often didn't really play with strangers or things like that. I would play with, I would friend. Um, I would only play with like local friends online, but I didn't want that. I don't know. I just felt kind of like this weird disconnect of playing with some random person across
Mm.
the globe, and like even
Yeah,
if I
I
don't know
play
you,
with
I'd
the
rather sit
computer.
across the table.
I've not played one game with a person. I play with the computer, right? If I play any game online, it is totally just the computer.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I find that interesting. So you design games of your own, right?
Yeah. My wife and I, we designed a game. We have a couple of things in the works. We actually have one produced that we did on Kickstarter during the pandemic, which was kind of a weird and scary time to do it because nobody knew what tomorrow brought in the beginning of it, and I mean that can still be true today. No one knows what tomorrow brings, but you know, one of the conversations that was had was, you know, thinking about the game from an external standpoint as opposed to just wanting to have it out there in the world
Mm,
could also mean like having this game out in the world can show people that like life hasn't stopped,
mm,
like that business is still happening, people are still create like, and it's not to say that like if people are coping and having whatever hardships they're having, that's fine and totally okay as well, but we kind of wanted to treat it with this mindset of like, um, let people see that it's still okay, that things are still being created,
mm,
that
mm.
that and what I think a lot of people also came to terms with is that entrepreneurship just kind of skyrocketed in general.
It did.
Everybody started honing in on their crafts, and it became a thing. And my in my full time job knew that I was doing this as well, and they were all for it. They were like, "Go for it." I showed my boss, and like his boss bought a copy, and I and it's really cool. Like I've played it with some colleagues and coworkers, and they love it. Some people have already asked when's the second part of it coming out because I'm like,
Well,
this took a
what
long time to make. So
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. What would go into the design of a game, right? You start with the end goal in mind and then you build it. Because
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking,
So so when the concept first came up, um, I feel like there was often times I would be in bed, I'm about to go to sleep, and
mhm,
I'm thinking about this idea, and then like, the idea, it's like, oh, maybe I'll do something tomorrow, and I go to bed,
mhm,
and then the next day happens, and I totally forgot about the idea.
mhm,
And the day that this idea for the game came, um, I don't know what happened, but I just felt like the need to get out of bed, and I thought like I have to write down as much of this as possible, as much
mm,
as I'm retaining, because if I go like it was like almost like identifying the habit in feeling like if I don't do something about this, it's going to be lost, and I don't want that to happen.
mhm,
I've already learned my lesson from other ideas, um, just forgetting them and them not kind of coming into fruition.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, just writing down a bunch of general ideas,
mm.
you know, talking with my wife over it, and then we just kind of like brainstormed and came up with some stuff. We got little pieces of paper, markers, and cards, and we just like two little kids just inventing their own toys. and games, and we just went to work. And it was, and none of it. And one of the other beauties of it is that it never felt like work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was, it was fun, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is really fun. And then we built on it, and then we decided to show it to others, and it's like, okay, we actually have something here, and
Right.
that was the rest is kind of history. So
Yeah. That is pretty interesting when I saw that. So let's shift a bit, and generally, I have each of my guests share their spiritual journey. And what it looks like is you grew up in church, out of church, a certain way, and as you move through, you've experienced different, maybe religions or spiritual trainings, and where you are today. So walk us through your spiritual journey.
sure, yeah. Um, so from a young age, I was raised Jewish.
Mhm.
Um, my grandmother, grandfather, and mother are Jewish, and many Jewish mothers, and likely grandmothers will likely say, if mom is Jewish, you're Jewish. That's it. There's no other way about it. My dad is actually Christian.
Okay.
Um, so for the most part, I was raised Jewish. I did go to church
Mhm.
sometimes, both with my dad and both with my friends. I went to synagogue.
Mhm.
Um, I probably visited some other temples and such. I never stuck around any of them long enough to really just become ingrained in like a routinely weekly or biweekly or monthly thing.
Mhm.
Um, in a weird way, I just kind of felt like, you know, maybe it was just my young age, but I was just kind of like, this is boring. Like
Mhm.
I like this. I'm sure that's probably like resonates with lots of kids. Like, or maybe like sit me next to the fun parent or the fun uncle or whatever, or like, oh,
Right.
like let's get to the part where they give out the cookies, or
Right.
like the part where they sing the song, or where they do the sketches, or fill in
Mhm.
the blank. But for the
Mhm.
most part, like the sermon was just kind of boring. Like that was like the equivalent of like kids watching the news, to me. Um, but like uh, religious foundations, it's not like they're not aware of that. They're like, well, let's incorporate you know uh historical religious events with puppets,
Yeah.
or let's make a comic or a
Mhm.
storybook, and that stuff works. Like I've seen a lot of it through that, and there's still a lot that I don't really know
Mhm.
um, when it comes to religious practices, whether that be Christian or Jewish.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll sometimes just ask. I'll like ask my dad. I'll ask my wife. I'll ask my parents.
Mhm.
My grandparents and so on. Maybe I'll watch something, or I'll read something online, and then I'll start to ask questions like, well, why? Like, I think, what was the last holiday that just passed? Passover, Easter. And
Right.
I had to even ask him, like, well, why did Jesus like sacrifice himself? Like, what was, like, the point of that? And then, like it was a sacrifice for us, so that we could, you know understand that he gave himself for us. I was like, okay. It, and like I was like, all right, like, I'm not trying to be like cynical or
No, I
anything.
don't get cynical. It just sounds
It's
like you're like, well, okay, right?
I
Like,
mean, like, I remember this one thing that stayed with me from one. It was like from a movie, and it was like a really terrible rendition of the Ten Commandments.
mhm,
It was with Christian Bale. I can't even remember the name of the film, but there was this one piece of dialogue that he said in the film to his son, where he says, um, he's very, very um, He's very, very devout. And he was like, just because I'm devout doesn't mean that you don't question everything.
Mm.
Like, don't even even like in following in my footsteps, like, and the way that it translated was like, keep an open mind, because there are a billion beliefs out there, and maybe it's not a one size fits all, and you know um, whatever belief system works for you,
Mm.
then go with that. So
Yeah, because you're right. There are so many, and it's personal, as I say. We each have to choose what works for us.
yeah.
And I was born Christian. I still consider myself Christian. Christian principles I love. Reading the Bible, but I studied all religions, and in each one, I found something that I love or that I can appreciate, right? And so it really we really get to choose. We really get to choose. And when I look at spirituality, I look at it from the perspective of choosing what's going to support us in living our best life, right?
Right.
What are the practices and what are the tools and what things can we use to support us? And that's what I talk about, the spiritual toolkit, and what's in the spiritual toolkit, and what practices are your go-to practices. And I ask each guest to talk about the three things that are their go-to practices. And it's just been so many different things that I really love to hear the go-to practices of my guests. I'm throwing that at you right now, Eric. Right? Well, what would you say? I will be your top three practices that your go-to practices that support you.
One right off the bat is probably nature.
Mm-hmm.
um I took into running and I really liked it, and I hadn't done it for a while, and I'm starting to do it again right now.
Mm-hmm.
And um, during that process of just getting back into it, or even doing it, I found that it was really gratifying to do it in nature. Um, there was literally a moment where I was running with a friend and we had to stop and smell the roses, and it was just like, um, and it
Yeah,
was just
that's
like,
something. Yeah, that
it
you
was
think
during
about
this.
how people say stop and smell the roses. How often do we do that? Because it's
Yeah,
really about just getting present in this moment, right? And
yeah,
appreciating what's happening in the moment. That's beautiful. Nature, yeah. And there's so many aspects to it because I even say I like the snow, I like the rain, I like the sun, I like all of it, right?
all over it. Yeah, the good and the good and the not so good.
Uh, I can
Yeah,
appreciate it all, right?
right, right,
So yeah, it's really important. And too, when I think of nature, there are just different times. The rain makes me feel great. Being in the snow gives me another whole energy. Being at the beach, so all those
right.
aspects of how nature can support feeling great, get you through different things. Yeah, so I love that. Nature
Yeah.
number one. What would be your other one?
Probably art.
Art.
Probably art. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, it's therapeutic, and it doesn't have to be. Um, I remember there was this thing that I would do with people when they would be like, "Do you want to, like, kind of like this, almost like this. Let's teach people how to make art,
Mm.
right?" And then I would like sit folks down, and I'd be like, "All right, make a face, simple face, like a happy, like have a nice day emoji, colon, open parentheses, make a face." And as they're starting, I would just say, "No, that's incorrect."
Mhm.
And they'd have this puzzled look on their face. Like they've drawn like two dots in a curly line, like most of their life. They'd like start over. And they'd start over, and I'd be like, "No, that's incorrect. Start over." And I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 instances in, is like when the question would kick in for them. I'd be like, all right, so then why do you need me to tell you that it was incorrect?
Mhm.
Because what is considered the right way to make, um, you know, to
Mhm.
create or to know something or make something that you've known or however long you've been here.
So art is very important, and just the creativity. I recently started to paint as a form of art, right? So I'm just um, getting into that right now, and I find it very relaxing and it's satisfying when I put the colors on and come up with something at the end. So, like you've said, I want to take a couple of classes, learn a few techniques, but I like that with the painting, you can just go for it, right? And I'm not looking, and I'm seeing that the more I paint, the more I'm making the pictures are looking different. I'm creating different, but I just like the idea of doing it. I'm not looking to become an artist or sell the paints, but it's really a great form of relaxation and being creative. So art and painting is one of the things that I am doing now too to support um, feeling good and to support relaxation. How and what would be a third one, Eric?
Ooh, man, what would be a third one? It's a good. Oh no. This probably
Mhm.
conversations.
Mhm.
Yeah. Connecting.
Mhm.
I feel like and it's also probably cliche, but I feel like as I've gotten older, I probably don't spend as much time connecting. So I
Mhm.
really take a moment to appreciate anytime like I'm talking with a friend of mine, talking with my family. We literally just had a birthday celebration. So, my wife and I, we have, she has a daughter and a son, and they're my stepdaughter and son.
Mhm.
And she celebrated her birthday, and it was all of us, both step parents and both parents
Mhm.
and her brother. And to me, it was just, it was a moment that I just really appreciated. And even though I don't spend time with them regularly, I probably
Mhm.
won't.
Mhm.
It's something that I know when I'm in the moment, I'm really like appreciating it. And every time I'm with my dad, we could be, you know, going to the corner store or going, on a trip. It doesn't matter. Like I, I, I take great, great pleasure in being with people that I love.
Um, I know that we've been through a lot this past 2.5 years with COVID. We're still here. We're still going through it. What would be one of the biggest shifts or changes that you've seen in your life for you since COVID and where we are today?
So one of the biggest things is my grandmother has Alzheimer's.
Okay.
And it's something that she's had for quite some time pre-COVID.
Mhm.
Um, the last time I ran, the last time I think I remember running the New York Marathon, she didn't even remember what day it was, and she's calling me in the middle of the race, and she's like, "Hey, can you go to the store for me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can, but I'm like 18 miles in a race already." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll when I'm done, I promise I'll." Um, the During the pandemic, it was pretty difficult because, well, for one, she had a stroke,
Mm.
and it was a scary sight. I she couldn't speak, she couldn't really move, and I didn't even know what was happening at the time until someone had mentioned that it was a stroke. They were like, "That's a stroke. She's having a stroke." And I
Mhm.
just bolted in a taxi, and we like the, I, we got her to a hospital. Thankfully, she's still here and
Mm,
everything. I remember that was a really hard day though, and I was in tears. I didn't know what was going to happen. I remember
mm,
when they brought her into the room to do uh like X-rays. They said to somebody like, "Do you mind if this patient goes first? It's super important," because they had to check for like clots and things of that nature and do an MRI.
mm-hmm,
And the person was a little disgruntled at the time,
mm-hmm,
because he was there for, he had something wrong with his hand. And he was like, "Yeah, sure. I mean, I get it. The need is more important." And he saw me just kind of like a full mess.
mm.
And he came over to me. And the craziest thing is that he was actually my old instructor.
Wow.
And he completely understand. He understood, and he was like, there's not, you know, he kind of treated it like there's no such thing as coincidence. Like, we're here, and like it's clear that you got to be here with your grandmother, and like that somebody like me was able to say, go ahead,
Mm-hmm,
and not be difficult as some patients might be. No, I'm important too. My pain is also here. And he he spoke with me.
mm-hmm,
He comforted me, and it was nice to have somebody who was familiar comforting me. Probably one of the best instructors I had. It was like for refrigeration and um, HVAC. It was one of the things I was studying during hospitality. It was like a union thing, and they gave us classes for free. So he just had a really beautiful way of explaining things that sounded insanely technical, but he knew how to communicate it in such a manner that is just like, oh, okay, that's it. And in that moment in the hospital, he communicated to me like, that she's gonna be okay. She's gonna be all right. You made it on time,
mm-hmm.
and all that. So um, that was a major shift for me, because ever since then, she went from the hospital to a nursing home, and she's still at the nursing home, and um, it's just it's not easy to see her the way that I used to see her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I still see it's. I think that there's probably a side of her that when she looks at me, regardless of how old I am, she's gonna be like, "Oh, I still see that little boy."
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like, I think that's twofold. Like that's the same. Like, I can see that, like, she's not totally there all the time, but for me, in my eyes, I still see the grandma that cooked me this soup and made me this dinner, and and sat with me, and did all these things. So that's probably been the biggest one of the biggest shifts in terms of unexpected shifts during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really good that she is still here and you are still able to communicate and have the memories and the moments that you share together, which is really good.
Yeah.
So it's been really great having you here tonight. We're about to come to an end, but I wanted to give you a moment to share. Whatever you want to share, right? About your art or how people can contact you or any messages that you like to give. I really appreciate the story of the connection with your grandmother and even to talk about like Alzheimer's as it is, and we've all experienced someone and to be able to be with them and to be compassionate and to be with them in a way that supports you and them during this time because of all the uncertainty around Alzheimer's. So I send you a lot of blessings and everything to you and your grandmother as you go through this together. And as I heard from you today, it's about connection and here you showing this great connection, right? that you have with your grandmother. So that's really really cool. Now I'll let you talk, right?
Thank you. Well, I mean, first and foremost, I want to really thank you for inviting me. Um, it was truly a pleasure. It, it was, I wasn't sure if I actually had even questioned if I thought like if I would be a fit. And having seen your conversations, it really is just genuine and organic, and it feels very in line. And so yeah, thank you again. Um, the so yeah, if people want to like find me, I usually use my Instagram, Eric Lugo Art. So that's EricLugoArt. And then the company that I started, Muse Monk Games, which is there, is also an Instagram handle, and I sell my game at that site. I recently gave away a PlayStation 5 for this
Mm.
game. But yeah, this is the game right here. It's called Choosing Sides,
Mm-hmm.
the virtual space. But yeah, that's the name of the game. Um, I'll occasionally do fundraising for Alzheimer's or for art-based projects. So like I would participate in the Walk for Alzheimer's. Sometimes I'll just do a GoFundMe that automatically directs to the Society for Alzheimer's,
Mm-hmm.
the Alzheimer's Association.
Oh, great.
They've made some incredible breakthroughs within the past year or two. It's not like they can make any promises, but anything, of course. But you know, for the most part, for folks who are, have anybody that they know and love that has experienced it and are not totally fully in the know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we will see it in our lifetime or not. But typically, a lot of the medical practices that have been around it have been around stopping what's already progressed or slowing down what's already progressed, because basically, without knowing the science behind all of it, it's protein buildup around certain nerves and areas of the brain that cause the forgetfulness to happen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that they've tried to treat it is to either stop what's already happened,
Mm-hmm.
or slow down its progression, slow down the protein buildup. The medical breakthroughs that have happened probably within the past year or so, it's actually reversing that.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the progression, but actually destroying some of the protein buildups. One of the things that's been really tricky is targeting the proteins without causing any damage to other parts of the brain. So I'll
Do
always
they
be an
know?
advocate.
Okay, I know. Do they know how that the protein buildup is just over time, or is it certain people, or is there any studies around how that
There's
begins and starts?
Yeah, I wish I could say I have all the answers. I
No, that's
obviously I
something
don't.
I have to check
But
out. I got to check
I'll
it.
always, yeah, like I'll always be an advocate, and I'll always listen, and I'll always learn, and and be in those
Mm-hmm.
spaces and share those things. Um, the I'm trying to remember if it was a matter of um, if there was like a hereditary factor, which I think may actually play a part.
Oh.
One of the other things that I think are big factors are diet,
Mm.
um, which a lot of people, if you see, like, there's actually been studies to show that people who are um, practicing an active lifestyle, uh, having a healthier diet lifestyle, have actually seen the effects. Um, have actually seen the effects less than those who haven't.
Mm.
So those are considered one of the factors. I think there's another study out there that I read that said something about, from a cultural standpoint, those most people of like India descent from India are probably the least affected culture.
Mm.
And they made some sort of like connection to some of the foods that they eat. Um,
I was thinking when you said that, when you said diet, what popped into my mind is everything is about you are what you eat, right?
right,
And
right.
that's the phrase that came to mind when you said diet, because food has a lot to do with everything that's happening in our bodies.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, so
Um,
thank you for that. So that I'll do a little bit more research on that, and thanks for giving me that bit of information because I didn't know because my mom had Alzheimer's, and I
right.
didn't know any of this, and it's been some time, about 12 years. So yeah, 2012, yeah, not 10 years to me. I've made them a
Mhm.
lot of years, 10 years, right? And I'm sure there's a lot more research and things that have happened over the past 10 years.
Yeah,
So I was so excited to have you on the show tonight. Thank you for jumping in. Eric
thank
jumped
you.
in. My guest for tonight had an emergency. So I'm so grateful that Eric was able to just jump in and share. And I really appreciate you, Eric, and I will definitely be in touch. And go to Eric's website. It is fabulous. I was on his website and I was excited today, right, as
Oh,
I
thank you.
roamed around. So go to
Mhm.
his website and check out his work. It is really great.
Thank you
So
so
thank
much.
you, Eric, and I will definitely be in touch.
All right.
Bye bye. Thank you for joining me tonight on Conversations with Reverend G. I am here every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on WEMS Live. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and we're on Twitch. So join me every week so that I can support you in living your best life in joy with grace and ease. Check me out every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on Instagram as Rev Grenetta. You have a great week, and I'll see you here next week live.